Okay, so I'm bored and I'm going to build up with some scrap pieces a homemade bearing press for skateboard wheels. Now, what I see a lot of you guys doing, pushing them onto your trucks or not using one of the $50 specialty tools. What you're doing, if you don't know, you have an outer race, an inner race. Behind this seal is your caged roller bearings. Okay, they're little ball bearings. They're in a cage. That's what's it. So when you're pushing on them with your trucks or something like that, you're only grabbing the inner race. And while you don't have to put a lot of pressure on them, it's not anything major. Probably no one in the history of putting on skateboard wheels will ever actually run into this problem. You don't want to push on the inner race, okay? If you're doing this in something that's a little bit more precise, through a material, it's not urethane, not soft rubber, doesn't have any give to it at all. Like if you apply this theory to putting a bearing into another piece of steel, you're more than likely going to rip the inner race out of the bearing when you apply pressure or tap it in with a hammer, something along those lines. I'm going to go a little bit nicer with mine, and it's probably going to look ugly, but I'm going to weld it up. I'm going to make it, one effective tool. Simplest thing I could tell you guys to do, if you want to build one and never, ever, ever run into a problem where you might accidentally damage the cage, the seal, the inner race, the outer race, any of that stuff, is probably just get a short bolt, 5/16. This is a 5/16 coarse thread, but 5/16 fits. It's tight, it's snug, it's what needs to be done. You do that, you get a couple washers that fit, and you want to make sure that the washers go all the way to this outer race edge without actually going into the urethane or anything like that. So like the washers that I'm starting out with, can I get them in the camera? Can I get them focused? There we go. I have a pile of parts, and the washers I'm starting out with, they kind of fit but are really tight. It's not a very good fit, so just barely touched them up, touched a different setup with a grinder, took a little bit off of them, and they go in. They don't snug on the wheel, they fall out. That's what you want. Okay, you can see I don't have any of the outer race exposed. Everything's nice and secure. That's how it should be. And if you use one of the fancy tools that you can buy, that's exactly how it is. Look at it. It's a shaft with a washer, another washer. You press it together. Boom, done. Okay, this one's going to be, basically, I'm going to take this bolt. We're going to weld one of these washers that I've already pre-fit to it, down here at the bottom where the head is. And we're going to take this piece of 3/8 fuel line. We're going to cut it the length that we need. And it's going to take up the gap. So you'll have, let's see if I can do this all in frame. So you'll have washer. You will then put bearing and wheel and bearing, and you will put second washer. And then this piece of tube will be cut short, and it'll give you just enough room. I'm going to cut this rod down, drill it, tap it, and you'll be able to thread it on. Now, if you don't want to do anything fancy, obviously you get a shorter bolt. You do this, you put a basic nut, or you can buy a wing nut, and screw it together, two-handed, boom, done, voila. Like I say, it's a little overkill unless you're doing this a lot. I'm sure most of you will be successful doing it, just pushing it onto your truck or pushing it on as far as you can go and then running the actual bolt down or the nut down onto the truck and backing it off. But like I say, you put all that stress load onto your inner race, and these things aren't the heaviest duty in the universe, and you can get them out of alignment. You can get accelerated wear on them. Sure, set of reds are cheap, but let's keep it all in mind. Let's not spend more than we absolutely have to. And like I said, it's a beautiful rain-filled day outside. I got the day off, and I am freaking bored. So this is what it's going to be. All right. Okay, so this is the general shape of it. I decided I'm going to weld a handle onto the end here so that I can hold it with two hands a little bit easier. I don't have to worry about, putting a socket or a wrench or anything else on that bolt head. This is the general setup of the spacer. T-handle, it's drilled, it's tapped. You want to make sure that you go all the way through if you do something like this. That way, as you're compressing, the threads of the bolt have somewhere to pass through. You don't bind up because you've dead-ended it. I'm gonna say it's not great. Hand drilled it, hand tapped it. I didn't put anything in a drill press. I didn't flat grind anything. I just set it up, did it real quick, freehand, and that's where I'm at with it. Figured I'd take this just to show everybody before I started welding it together. Also note, if you're gonna weld these, I'm gonna take the wheel out when I weld it. Don't weld on the wheel. You can mess up your bearings. You can melt the seal out by overheating. You can destroy the wheel. I mean, if you've just got a junk wheel or something like that, junk bearing, you're setting it up as a jig like this to get the spacing and everything right, fine, dandy, do whatever you want. But, if you're doing this like I am, I'm going to pull this all apart, and I will put a spacer set in here to take up the difference between, that the wheel would normally take up that air gap right there. That way, when I weld everything together, it's flat, it's straight. Granted, I'm throwing this together quick, but you don't want it to be like all cattywampus and wonky, and you want it to press together straight and even. And you don't want to be fighting anything. You don't want to make it harder on yourself than you absolutely have to. So, we'll cut this off again, and I'll weld everything up, show you guys what it looks like after it's welded. I got some extra bearings and some wheels, and we will put a set in with it to verify that it actually works, and this wasn't a colossal waste of time. Okay, so I got everything welded up. That's the base and the handle. That's the T-nut for the pressing. As you can probably tell, that is not a piece of thin wall tubing in between the handle and the washer. Anytime you're going to start a project, make sure you have all the right pieces, and I forgot that my welder was out of gas, so I couldn't use as thin a wire as I wanted. I ended up using flux core wire, which isn't pretty at all, and I had to go to a thicker material because I was blowing through the thin stuff. So something else that this will come in handy for is, and I don't think I can do this in one shot. Well, no, I can't do it in camera, in frame. But take my word for it, you can use it to pop the bearing out of the other side. There's the bearing. Okay, bearings are popped. So let's see if the silly thing actually works. Okay, let's see. Seal goes outside of the wheel. So we have one. We have a wheel. We have two bearings, and I got it on crooked. So I'm going to pause this again and set it up properly because I cannot do it one-handed and I don't have a camera stand. Okay, I think you can tell the bearings are not in all the way, and I'm going to use this vise. So pause again. Okay, sorry about all the stopping and starting. I am not proficient at videotaping things yet, but normally you'd be able to do this with just your hands. Hold it between the two. Everybody nice and snug. Take this off. Bearing seated, in frame, maybe. Okay, there you go. Next time I do, I guess I'll paint it. See what color it ends up being. And we decided on equipment orange. So if you've ever seen like a piece of industrial equipment that's that crazy bright orange, that's actually what color that is. No, I did not prep the metal. No, I did not prime it. It will probably get 2 coats of this and go into a box, and that's just where it's going to stay. But there you go. There's an easy way to do a bearing tool. Like I said, you can do much simpler than this, just with a nut and a bolt and a couple of appropriately sized washers.